formed in a dream, kept in a thought, carried across oceans, spoken in whispers, passed down from elders, planted in gardens of okra, prayed for in sanctuary, resisted with fury, protected with faith, created with love, born into being, from root to bone. You are here.
This podcast talks about colonial, racial, and gender-based violence. Please listen at your own pace and capacity. And remember to do what you need to do to care for yourself if you feel activated by this content. Should you need resources, please check out our section on resources at decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well. Greetings, my good people. This is Dr. Jen, founder of Decolonizing Therapy, and here to continuously have conversations that allow us to shift the mental health paradigm on its head with as much authenticity, realness, and vulnerability as possible. I am your host of this fabulous podcast, From Root to Bone. It's season 2, and this is a podcast for folks who are parched, poised, and honey, so deeply primed to rehydrate our souls and to do some unlearning. It's a place where I get to lovingly unlock gates and have some real ass conversations with elders, teachers, intellectual crushes, folks doing the real ass work towards reclaiming the juiciest parts of our ancestries, history, collective health, and liberation. And the goal is to get to a place of reclaiming a lot of the nitty-gritty of our roots together, collectively, as well as looking at what that looks like for us within our own individual places, spaces, bodies, modes, and maps of identity. And so I am so grateful and honored to introduce our 2 guests today. We have Leslie Priscilla, and I'm going to get into a bio and a reading, as y'all know we love to do in just a second, and Fernando Deveras. And I am just deeply, deeply grateful, for their beingness in this world. Thank you, y'all. But also all of the knowledge, if I could Millie Rock right now, like all of the knowledge and the energy that y'all bring in. So welcome.
Thank you. Wow. It just feels so good to be here with you. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jen, for having us. I like how you framed the juicy bits of our collective liberation and all that. I like that. I'm going to adopt that.
Yes, it is ours. On my virtual altar, I'm going to be real here. I was like shifting around. And so I'm going to bring in a little bit of realness. One of the things that Leslie and I often talk about is some of our Virgoing, although that is not my sun sign for those that are into more Western astrology. My sun sign is a Cancer, but I have hella planets. Like in Virgo, I'm talking my Venus, my rising, my Mars, my North Node. And so we often will like text chat about some of the ways that like being hard on ourselves shows up. And so before y'all showed up, I'm off camera with our beloved producer Tribble, and I'm like, what's the right thing? It has to be the right thing. What is it gonna be? Right? Not kind of doing that, a little bit doing that. And I'm running around and like, oh, maybe it's this. Maybe I should, a sage bundle that my sister from California sent me, or maybe it should be this. And then I thought, and I sat down and I was like, oh, I am going to show and just read a little niblet, I think, from a beloved person that I believe that we all appreciate. This is a new book from Dr. Samad Jabbar that I have had the blessing and the pleasure to co-sign on. Have a little right up in the back here. It's Radiance and Pain and Resilience, the Global Reverberation of Palestinian Historical Trauma. And I just thought, this would be a beautiful place to start. Dr. Jabbar is a consultant psychiatrist practicing in Palestine. And I think Dr. Jabbar, for many of us, has been a bit of a lifeline and a link in understanding the historical mental health components of living amongst literal ethnic cleansing, starvation, and those tactics and what they do and what it does to our body, mind, and spirit, and to our children. And I know that y'all have been so verbal and loud, as we should be, as we all should be, about the level of violence and genocide, and in particular, what is happening for our children. And so I thought this felt right, to bring this into the space and place this on our altar. And I just want to read a small paragraph here that I thought was pretty beautiful. Mm-hmm. This is in page, I probably should put my readers on, 62. Innocence under fire, the deepening crisis for Gaza's children and their cry for help. This was originally published, by the way, in March 2024 in the Middle East Monitor by Dr. Jabbar. Amid the relentless military onslaught by Israel on the Gaza Strip, the plight of children in this besieged region worsens by the day. The need for psychological and social support for these young souls was evident even before the current escalation, but now it has reached a critical juncture. Right? In the words of Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Gaza has tragically transformed into a graveyard for children. Shockingly, approximately 17,000 children in Gaza are left without the care of their families or are separated from them, intensifying their psychological and social anguish. Doctors on the ground here have coined a grim acronym, WCNSF, for Wounded Children, No Surviving Family, highlighting the heart-wrenching reality faced by countless children. Each day, dozens of children endure amputations, leaving them with permanent disabilities, while the specter of famine looms large, exacerbating an already dire situation of malnutrition and anemia. The violence ravaging Gaza inflicts deep psychological wounds on its children, who urgently require support to navigate the daily horrors they endure.
I'm so glad that you started with Dr. Jabbar, because her keynote in the Collective Liberation Conference that Dr. Sandra Leon Villa hosts was so powerful. I was in just her heart, like she's just such a beautiful spirit. And I get to see her next year again at another conference, and I'm so excited. So I'm really glad that you began with her, because she is so much of the spirit of this movement. And her work is so important. So thank you. Thank you for placing that.
Leslie Priscilla is a first-generation non-Black Chicana mother to 3 bicultural children. She's a descendant of indigenous Tarahumara and Raramuri lineage, and resided on Tangva Kit's land, also known as Santa Ana in Orange County, California, all of her life. She identifies as both Mexican-American and a detribalized indigenous mujer. Leslie shares her medicina by offering coaching, workshops, support, and advocacy for Latinx, Chicanx families, locally, nationally, and internationally, both in person and online via the Latinx Parenting Organization. She founded this bilingual organization and movement intentionally rooted in children's rights, social and racial justice, the individual and collective practice of nonviolence and parenting, intergenerational and ancestral healing, cultural sustenance, and the active decolonization of oppressive practices in our family. She is also the author of a forthcoming book. Leslie, what is the name?
Chancla. No más así, Chancla. I forget the subtitle still, so I'll pull it up later, but it's called Chancla. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and we cannot wait to have it. We need it, and we need your voice, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I am going to read from a blog that Tribble and I both really dug. And this is on their website, y'all, an open letter to white parenting experts on privilege and allyship. And to read the whole thing would probably take about 15, 20 minutes. So I'm going to give you a little baby snippet here. Okay. Dear white parenting expert friends, first of all, let me thank you for doing what many consider important work. As an emerging voice in the field of parent education and coaching, I've benefited both personally and professionally from the work you've done, the books you've published, the cute and encouraging Facebook posts and Instagram graphics you've created for people to share. I've often shared them myself. Yeah. Let me be clear that this bone I'm about to pick dry. Wait, rewind. Let me be clear that this bone I'm about to pick dry belongs not only to me, but to countless other non-white parents, families, and parenting experts of color that I've had the opportunity to engage with, and often on the back of this shared qualm. Some of us have even created whole damn conferences to address the systemic foolery in the parenting world. The disappointment is this, and I'm just going to say it. The parent coaching and education world is too damn white. Everywhere I turn, there's another digital conference with no speckle of melanin in sight, or maybe one speckle. It is never above 10%. We are not seeing ourselves represented, and it's more and more nauseating each time. I've tried to tell myself that it shouldn't bother me, that you're not to blame, that you don't know any better. I've tried to convince myself that you mean well, and that's all that should matter. But that's not all that matters. What matters are our voices. What matters are our stories. What matters is that you hold yourself and the organizers that invite you onto their stage accountable. It matters that you don't let us continue to do all of the heavy lifting, all of the equity work, all of the labor to bring the perspectives of Latinx and Black, Indigenous folks of color into the world. To quote my friend, Trina Green Brown, founder of Parenting for Liberation, in a podcast episode, which was a part of a Parenting Decentering Whiteness series, I am asking a lot. Yes, we need you to do more, a lot more. We need you to use your privilege to hand the mic over to someone who hasn't spoken yet. We need you to stop assuming that all our families have the resources, capacities, privilege to do the things the way you expect parents to do them. We need you to do this, even though it's not going to make you any money. We need you to acknowledge your privilege. We need you to wield it in support of parents, families, and children that look very different than yours. We need this now. I've sent that to a number of people, by the way. It's like friends over here. Like, oh, you should read this. Check this out. Interesting.
I remember writing that. I remember whipping out my computer so fast because something pissed me off. And it was like, it was another flyer. Right? I was just like, all right, because it was going to be a Facebook post too. And I was just like, no. I need to this was before May 2020. It was like in the early parts of 2020. And so I had been feeling a lot of rage and a lot of frustration. And also like indignation, because I feel like for so long I had been working with families who deserved so much better. And that existed over here. And then on the other extreme existed just immense privilege and disconnection from struggle. And so, yeah, it ended up getting a lot of attention at that time, which I was grateful for. I started becoming like the token Latina parenting person on these conferences, which is like another conversation, right? Because in being that, there's observations to be made about how people move, even when they think that they're doing the right thing. And I hadn't read that in a long time. So I kind of forgot that I had written some of those things, but I'm really grateful that you brought it in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And what are you bringing to our virtual altar, Leslie?
I have some smoke happening behind me. Let me just check to make sure that nothing's burning. Sometimes I don't know what I'm smelling. And I'm also bringing, I've been doing I'm working with a friend of mine who has introduced her modality, Daniel Foer's modality, actually, of ancestral healing. And so we've been doing these practices, and I feel like really good to be keeping my journal, but then also my great uncle, Juan Jose Arriola, was an author that I just realized in the last few months was like a very famous author in Mexico. And so I've been feeling really connected to his creative spirit in my writing. And I wanted to bring that in to offer that too, because I know that you're also in the process of your publishing for your second book. So I wanted to bring him in here and, hopefully just be present in that creative spirit for this conversation and then what's to come after that in the writing.
Thank you. We receive it. And your Theo. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And without further ado, we would like to introduce Fernando. And so, Fernando Deveras is the son of Mexican immigrants, a father to an 11-year-old son, a certified educator, and a trained facilitator at Latinx Parenting. Fernando has worked alongside Leslie to develop programming for dads, youth, and educators. Yes. Fernando is also known for his video explainers. Yes, I love that term, on subjects such as history, politics, and organizing. Yes. And so there's so much to choose from things that you have said and done. But you know what? I don't know. There was a piece that I had never read before that I really enjoyed on the blog, on the website, because it is an area that is near and dear to my heart. It is reimagining and decolonizing school safety and in the inner city struggle. And as an inner city kid myself, having grown up right around poverty level, at or below, depending on the year or the day, poverty level, and consistently working with families and parents, whether I was the practitioner, in the hospital, the clinic, the partial care, the school system, or I was like supporting family members to get deeper help and to get the kind of support that they were craving, although that did not always happen. This has always been a topic and an issue that has continued to come up. Like, what is the kind of care that is needed in our cities, in our communities, in our hoods, that really considers the cultural ideation and also considers how violent and pathologizing and how carceral it can be when we're engaging with our youth. Yeah. And so I'm going to read a little bit of this beautiful blog. I suggest y'all check it out. And so forgive me, Fernando. So I'm also going to jump around in the interest of.
No, go for it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So one of the most powerful gifts we can offer our familias is space to reflect. When we are given room to examine the oppressive narratives and paradigms that we've been taught, we can begin the work of detaching ourselves from those narratives and paradigms that we've internalized from generation to generation. For many of our families, this space has always been out of reach, a luxury for those with more resources and more support. And some of us make the mistake of believing that our people are too set in their ways to see things differently. We mistakenly fall into the deficit mindset where we tell ourselves that terms like nonviolence and decolonization will just go over their heads. But in reality, we are all capable, yes, of understanding the framework of nonviolence and decolonization when we are given space to reflect. Earlier this month, y'all hosted a workshop for a group of powerful señoras organized by the beautiful team at Inner City Struggle from East Los Angeles. ICS is doing incredible work of helping families to reflect on the punitive and carceral models of school safety that we commonly see. Examples such as police on campus, suspensions, tickets and citations for students, etc. The goal is to help families reach the space where they can reimagine what a school actually needs in order to create a safe environment for students to learn and grow. It's an important mission. Sounds simple, right? But we know that it's not. Gonna jump ahead a little bit here. So instead of sending police in to break up fights, let's figure out why our kids are fighting in the first place and teach them how to resolve conflict without violence. Instead of metal detectors to catch the weapons, ask ourselves what kind of culture we're creating on campus that makes our students feel so threatened that they need to arm themselves. Instead of random drug tests, let's support the mental health of our students so they don't resort to self-medicating to deal with their stresses and traumas. Better yet, let's work to reduce or completely eliminate the stresses and the traumas. But if we're serious about addressing safety for our students, then we need to get to the root of the problem. We need to build a culture of connection, of care, and community where kids feel welcome and supported. All of that begins with giving our people space for reflection so we can set a new intention to build towards that vision of a better world for our families.
Dang, similar to Leslie. Like, I forgot I wrote that. It's been a while. Yeah.
Thank you.
But that came from, like I mentioned in that piece, we were asked to present to a group of mothers in LA, and we were talking about just decolonized nonviolent parenting, which is one of the workshops that Leslie developed that I went in to facilitate. And part of it is just giving them that space to ask those questions like, what have we been normalized, or what has been normalized in our communities? What have we become accustomed to? And what else is possible? And in my work as a teacher, in my work doing some community organizing as well here in Orange County, I encountered that limited imagination because people are so used to just resorting to those same tactics that we know. There's violence. Okay, let's get some security guards and cops to break up the fights. We see kids bringing drugs in. All right, drug tests so that they don't try it over here. Like, okay, but we're not digging deeper. Where's the violence coming from? Where's the pain coming from that they're trying to medicate with the drugs? So yeah, I can go in on that. But yeah, thanks for bringing that piece back.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for writing and thank you for the work y'all do. Yeah, because I know that you're very active in your communities as well. So we're going to get more into that. So
Mhm.
thank you. And is there anything that you choose to lay on our virtual altar, Fernando?
Yeah, I didn't know this was part of it, but I guess what I was telling Leslie right now lately, I've been doing a lot of reading. She's seen like I'm just glued to books for the last couple days, and I just wanted to put my notebook here where I got
Yeah.
pages and pages of notes I've been writing about the books I've been reading. So just I encourage everybody to take some time, pause from the get up and go mindset, and just sit down sometimes and absorb from the elders, the teachers, the people who've been doing the work before us, because there's a lot of lessons in there. I was reading Always Running by Luis J. Rodriguez, who we're going to be meeting later next year. And in it, he talks about some of the things that they were doing back in the 60s and 70s to address the violence and the gang violence in their communities. And for me, I'm like, oh man, we've been talking about this for decades because they're talking about like, oh, we need jobs programs, we need arts programs for kids, we need the mothers and fathers to be involved in the work. And
Mm,
I'm like, oh, okay, these are a lot of the same solutions that we're trying to figure out how to implement today. And so to know that this is, again, people have been where we are to in
yes.
one way or another. And so we got a lot of lessons that we can learn from them.
Yes, word. And I suppose we can like dive right into it since you just ripped the door open. And we're like, yes, we
Mhm.
here. So I'm gonna jump around a little bit, but I'm like, for the folks, for the listeners, for the people out there that had that moment when you said that of like, oh, see, we're dealing with the same shit. Oh, we're still here. We haven't moved, or why do we have the same problems? What what might y'all say to that? What are your feelings around any of that? I think very learned, understandable, that sort of lived experience of like, damn, have we shifted? Have we moved? Why are we still dealing with the same things?
Yeah. Well, I want to hear Fernando's response because I feel like for me, when I get to the point of helplessness, like I can identify it as a sense of helplessness. Like it's not enough, it's not fast enough, it's not preventing the things that we need to prevent. I feel very frustrated sometimes that so much goes into intervening and not on preventing, just as a parenting, with the parenting lens, and just how much resource and need there is. And I feel like I've had to shift my expectations, right? Like I've had to know that I'm in this struggle, not to necessarily sit in the shade of this tree. Like, but I must plant these seeds, I must water these seeds. I must tend to this land. We are not going to see full-fledged, like utopian, anything in our lifetime because these systems have set it up so that now there's an undoing, I think that's happening as they are still doing, right? There's an unlearning that's happening, but there is still ongoing harm happening. So I find the shift in my expectation around the fact that I'm here to do anything other than create the dents that I'm here to create, right? And to really start to build this mold that I would love for my descendants to see one day. And also joining others in that, right? Like the joining of others in that is something that is so beautiful and enriching and fulfilling and just like juicy, right? We said juicy earlier in the conversation, like just having relationship with you, having relationship with Fernando, having relationship with my children, having relationship, like truly everything is relationship, and relationship to the land, relationship to politics, relationship, right? Like everything is relationship, and everything requires care.
Mm.
So I just kind of want to like expand the lens a little bit. Like we're so tiny, right? It's Kimya Dawson who says, I am just a speck of dust inside a giant's eye. And that's mantra, right? Like there's something bigger than us. Our job is to tap in, to listen, to know what our assignment is, to fearlessly and fiercely, seek out the fulfillment of that assignment and shed control around how much time we even have. I could be gone tomorrow. Like I have no idea. And so I approach life with such deep humility and not knowing, um, without releasing the expectation, of something, right? Something shifting, little things shifting. I use this example in my parenting courses a lot because I talk about these little micro moments of liberation, right? Where I can notice that my daughter, for example, doesn't bite her nails, where I bit my nails my entire life and continue to. Tried getting a manicure the other day and I just, nope, like, so it's noticing those things too, right? Where it's like, okay, that there's something that changed here in this relationship. There's something that changed here in this dynamic. And I just find that so precious, right? Apart from everything that needs to change out here, those moments make up everything else, right? Like it's really important for us to recognize that, I think.
Yeah. And to add to that, I feel, to go back to the question of like, why are we still seeing some of the problems that we're facing? I think what Leslie was saying is important is, yeah, some of the problems are still there. We're always going to see people on different points of the spectrum when it comes to the struggle. There will always be people who are facing the worst of the system and the worst effects that the system has to produce. But then there are people who have managed to climb out and to see things differently and to experience opportunities that allow us to have a different lens, a different perspective, different levels of power to implement change. And so those are the people help me with that word, whose responsibility, Leslie knows I say that word all the time, whose responsibility it is to help those other people who are still stuck in the valley climb their way out too. I think we also need to remember, like, we're up against a massive machine, a massive system that is centuries in the making. And so when we say, hey, this is something that people were dealing with in the 60s, why are we still dealing with it today? Because it is as Angela Davis says, freedom is a constant struggle. It's an ongoing battle. And we have to, like Leslie was mentioning, count those wins, count those steps forward. Kwame Ture, who's someone who I always go back to, he has this bit where he was talking to somebody about like, oh, our people they're so inactive and they're not engaged and they're, the consciousness, they're not conscious. And Kwame's like, don't ever let anyone convince you that the consciousness of your people is not growing.
Mm.
Because if you try and get Black men and women to sit in the back of a bus today, you're gonna see that that's not gonna happen. If you try and smack a Latino student's hand in school for speaking Spanish, you're gonna run into some problems. And so there is progress being made. The fact that we were talking about Palestine earlier. Palestine was something that almost nobody had on the tip of their tongue 10 years ago. It was a very small group of people who were fighting that struggle, Palestinians and their allies who really knew what was up. And today, you ask anybody under the age of 25, and they know what's up. Even if they don't know all the details and the nuances, they understand that there is a position to take, and they know which position is the moral one. So progress is always happening. We have to avoid that temptation to fall into the pessimism that, oh, we're stuck. We're stuck. No, we ain't stuck.
Mm.
And the people who are trying to keep us stuck, the people who want things to stay as they are, will do everything they can to convince you that there's nothing we can do about it, to minimize those victories. And so it's our job to elevate those victories and keep building on them.
Yes. Thank you both. Yes. And so speaking of these victories, we're going to go from the bottom up, kind of flip it on its head. So I know that both of y'all have been really doing a lot of work for some time in Santa Ana, right? What is now known as Santa Ana. And I'm wondering how your communities in Santa Ana have been managing with the massive infiltration of ICE. And are there some, maybe victories is not the right word because there's also so much loss and pain and violence, straight up fucking violence. But I'm wondering how folks are managing, and are there any small places or spaces of victory in the form of expanded community, in the form of more like recognition of one another, in the form of maybe more political level of consciousness.
I want to just give credit to, people who see people like me and Leslie online saying what we say and doing the work that we do. I want to just really emphasize that we are, like Leslie said, we're a speck of dust in a giant eye. There are so many people in our community that are doing the work that you'll never hear their names. You'll never see their social media go viral, but they're out there doing the work. I'm thinking of organizations, we have the Rapid Response Network that is doing daily morning patrols in areas where we know that ICE is going to be frequenting car washes, Home Depots, uh, immigrant communities, making sure that people there are safe. We have Latino Health Access, that is another organization here that does work with the families, providing all kinds of services, mental health services, physical health services. Again, you'll never hear their names because these are people who, because of their status, because of their precarity in our society, have to stay behind the scenes. So I want to just name that there are people who are doing the work that we don't hear about. I
Word.
see, yeah, I see that there are, like you were saying, there's a lot of people who, when shit hits the fan, as Kwame Ture says, when the flames get hot,
Mm.
that's when people show up because they see, okay, it's in my backyard now. It's not something that I'm seeing online. It's not some headline that I'm seeing in the newspaper. It's my neighbor got snatched. It's my classmates in school are afraid for their families. So early in the year, we saw thousands, literally thousands of people taken to the streets to protest. We saw high school students organizing walkouts in protest of ICE activity in our community. We saw hundreds of people. If you ever go to a city council meeting on a regular weekday or, on a regular time of year, it's virtually empty unless it's people who are, from unions or from special interest groups who are trying to get some business done. And when we saw ICE activity happening, we saw hundreds of people coming to city council, people who had never been there before, going to sign up to give public comment, just to have their voices heard, just so that people in their community know we're standing in solidarity with you. And for the people who are in positions of power to know that we demand that for them to step up to do their part. But we definitely see, like you said, that awakened consciousness. What we try to do, I feel, in the work that we do is help people to channel that. Because once you start to pay attention, there's 100 different ways you could take it. And I don't want to be the one to tell you, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to do. I want you to know what you can do. And then find a way where you take your talents, your skills, your passions, your connections, and do something with
Yes.
that. So yeah, I'll pass the mic to Leslie to add on to whatever she wants to add.
I just want to celebrate Fernando because he's very humble, and it is so important to recognize the work that so many are doing. But he has really taken it upon himself to have biweekly teach-ins and ensure that these places where community can gather happen. I have loved to see the children's marches that we have had. I've loved to see other people that we're in community with organize story time around Palestine, right, for children at the park. So we're seeing a localization that I think is so necessary in the groups that we've run, especially the groups that run for parents. My hope is in them and their relationship and conversations that they have with their children, because we are shifting so much, not just for ourselves, but in the generations, right? We're giving lenses and perspectives, and we're offering certain truths and certain realities to the next generation that is supposed to be done carefully, right? It's supposed to be done with so much intention. And so I've just been seeing parents, whereas maybe they wouldn't have understood necessarily what I was talking about when I wrote that article in 2020, right? We now see the importance of not just prioritizing these families that have no idea what the experience of this immigrant family is, of what this Palestinian family is, and these unique challenges, right? So I'm seeing families, parents in general, just kind of turning more towards the reality that our struggle is connected, right? And I love seeing that. I love seeing that because that is really what we need to be communicating to our children. Like that's what we want them to just embody, right? To use that term that you use, Dr. Jen, but it's really important, and it's happening. So I want to celebrate that because parents are doing amazing work with their kids.
Word, yes, yes. Thank you both. Thank you both for the work you do in the world and on the ground in these technological streets. It's a whole other level and layer of organizing. As someone who is like used to like being in the people, but younger, a little younger, in a little bit different way, and a little bit before these like Instagram streets ever hit or TikTok or any of
Hmm.
these things. But I so agree with you. And I think about like in our recent last month office hours or a month before, we brought in like, Gabriella Anakbay in USA because it was like, yo, there are so many people that taught me some of the things that I spew, right? Like I didn't understand forced contractualization and how deeply it connected to forced migration and colonization and what the F that had to do with mental health. If I had not been organized, sitting on the ground by people 15 years younger than me, which is beautiful, that multi-intergenerational level of learning and unlearning. And so I think it's important that we're always uplifting,
Yeah.
and just like so grateful for the folks that, for people that put themselves out there in the mouthpieces, as well as for the folks that are constantly, those kind of torchbearers, the one lighting up the fires and burning it.
Yeah.
And it just looks different, but really starting to understand how we're all deeply needed in this.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want to,
Yeah.
as I'm hearing you talk, I'm seeing in my mind's eye, my teacher, my maestra Ruth, who passed away in the spring of this year. And she was an 82-year-old bad bitch. Like, I don't know how, like, I don't know how else to say it. She had been working her entire life towards the liberation of children. Like, that was her mission. That was what she was here. And she did, like, to see the celebration of her life and, the time at the time that she passed, and to feel her spirit still in me, like, so much stronger. I have her here with me because she really was the first to ever say, and I say this to everyone, she was the first to ever say to me that parenting is not about parenting, it's about social justice for children, right? And so she gave me so much of the lens for understanding power dynamics, and the role of a parent in being a child's first oppressor or liberator, right? Like those were things I learned about bell hooks through this white woman
Mm.
from New Zealand, right? Ruth. And the group that we have of students of hers are called torchbearers for Ruth, right? So to see ourselves as a part of that lineage, to see ourselves as a part of the family that is everyone struggling for liberation, it's beautiful. And to have these teachers, right? To have these visionaries, to have these people that are in the same lifetime it's really important. It's so precious to me. But I know Fernando also wanted to add.
No, no. Sorry, I was just listening to what you were sharing about Ruth there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you were saying too about how there's so much work to do and everybody has their different offerings in this bit. Because like Leslie was saying, she's focusing a lot on the liberation of children, helping our families to break free from these paradigms. I try and do the education work to talk to people about the political, philosophical, historical context of where we find ourselves. I feel like that's something that I want more people to start to understand is we all play a role. And we can't be bashing people for not playing the role that we want them to be playing. That's something that we've encountered ourselves. There's people who see the kind of advocacy that Leslie and I will do on social media and say, you're not doing enough. We need you to be doing this. Why aren't you hitting the streets in this way? And that for me it's a very divisive way of looking at things. Instead of saying, how can we bring our strengths together? It's pitting our strengths against each other. So that's just something I want to emphasize too, is if you're a cook, we need people cooking meals and serving them out to the community.
Yeah.
If you're an educator, we need you helping the kids because sometimes the schools aren't doing enough. If you're a builder, build something that helps
Yes.
people get to where we're trying to go, So everybody's got something to offer. And I just want
Absolutely.
people to start asking themselves, what is that thing that I have to offer?
Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. And if you're out there listening, whether you are driving, whether you are cooking and have a child on your hip, whether you are, you know, kind of avoiding things, I love to do this. I like to start cleaning things that I don't need to clean instead of like writing, creating,
Hmm.
whatever. The invitation is also like, where do my skills shine? Like what feels easy-ish to you, and how do we bring that to the forefront and pass it forward? Like my mama used to teach me that too. My mom will frequently say, like I've organized my mom a little bit, like I've educated. My mom is 76, and I remember her coming to People's Institute of Survival and Beyond on doing racism trainings with me, beginning of my process when I was resource training, and I'm over here learning and understanding more about how mental health providers, lawyers, legal folks are really, we're part of the problem and we gatekeep a whole lot, right? And in having this analysis of power, really understanding how how I've harmed before I had an analysis of power, and what before I understood why people were poor. I got to make decisions as a clinical psychologist or as an intern or an extern on whether or not brothers got to continue to be incarcerated or continue upstate, right? And I didn't have an analysis of power, right?
Hmm.
And so when I think about these things and I think about my mom coming in to say, "What, but baby, you're helpful. You're not harming anyone," because my mama loves me regardless, right? Like, "You're not harming anyone. What do you mean? What do you mean?" Like, wait, mom, you need to get organized a little bit. Like, we need to like educate you, and bringing her into spaces that were dimensional, multiracial, multi-generational. So she's seeing other folks that mirror her using language that she can understand, and then even putting connections for timelines in which she was growing up, what was really happening, why my grandparents were brought here, or forced to move here, or right? How the slave trade affected their migrations, or, like really putting things together. And I find that it's been such a beautiful process to watch my 70-something-year-old mother be like, "Okay, well, here's the ways that I can help. Maybe in Texas, I can go and, do some translation, or help or hold some of the kids, or how can I get into these centers?" And I'm like, yes, like,
Hmm.
all I know how to do is cook. Not all you know how to do. Like, what about the folk, like, pass out these cards for me? All the folks fixing everybody's lawns? Translate and just be like, "Hey, give this to your cousin, spread this around. Here's some free legal fees." Like, Ma, look at all the ways you can support and help, And she's like, I don't know
Hmm.
the language. I don't need, you don't need to all the time. We're for the people,
Yeah.
and this is what I hope that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
Yes.
I think to everybody, virtually everybody knows the phrase "it takes a village," right? It's like such a colloquialism that people throw around, but then they underestimate the power of actually stepping into that vision in however small way you can. If it just means go knock on your neighbor's door and say, "How you doing? Do you need anything? I'm here if you do." If it could be sharing your tools. It could be uh hey, I'll watch your dog for you. Whatever it is, like small things to start to show that I can be of service to people in my community.
Yeah.
And just go ahead. I see Leslie wants to add on here.
It makes me think of that experience that we had earlier this year, where there was a neighbor who he and his wife were clearly having a hard time. We live in Santana. Santana is about 78% Latina. A lot of cholos, a lot of like, just immigrant families. And so sometimes we meet really interesting people that have like these stories, these like very rich stories, right, of survival and of resilience. And we get to talk to them. And so Fernando ended up meeting a young man. And so one evening we were out walking and we saw him and his wife was pregnant in the car, and they had this little toddler. And I haven't had a toddler forever. My youngest is 6 now, and so it feels far away. It's not that far away, but it feels kind of far away that I had a little 2-year-old. And so for a little while, I just took her off I was like, "I'm a safe person." I introduced like, "I'll just take her over here, Mama, you can get some rest, Fernando." And the young man ended up kind of, having a little conversation separately that was necessary, I think, and helpful, we hope. But even in those little ways, right, where it's like, that's not something that I'm not necessarily showing up at the park every night being like, I'll watch your toddlers. But when there is that need to step in, that's just hopefully who people are, right? That they know that they can attune to the need, that they can assess what is the best place for them to show up and when. And I think that that takes like a little bit of knowing yourself, right? It takes a little bit of like seeing yourself as a person who can do something. Because I think a lot of times the systems have kind of convinced us that like, what are you going to do, right? Like I feel like that's very intentional messaging that we've received, is like, what can you even do? Why is that your problem? How are you responsible for that? How is that your fault? You know, and this conversation recently with a friend of mine, and I was talking to her about how when I leave the gym, it's really interesting because I feel amazing, but the gym is in an area where I'm witness to a lot of people who are living on the street, right? A lot of folks that are really struggling, and there's drug use in that area. And so I see the juxtaposition of it, right? And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of, you know, it's a lot. And there's still a lot of people that will look at the unhoused population and just think of them as like scum of the earth, right? Just like they did that to themselves. I am not responsible. I wash my hands of this. And it's like, no, like we each have some responsibility to our fellow human, right? Like we must see ourselves as responsible for each other. And I don't want to force that down anybody's throat. I don't want to say like, you know, and I didn't say this to her. I didn't say, do something, right? Like then do something about it. But I do see us as responsible for one another. And I think that there's a foundational, you know, sometimes lack of understanding that for folks, no matter how like Christianized or how, you know, even though they're going to church every Sunday, like they're still side-eyeing this person that's sleeping on the street. And it's just a very big disconnect. It's interesting.
Word. Yeah, rather than humanizing, right? And even like, hey, what's up? How you doing, my man? You know, like the same folks you see in your community. I have this little every Wednesday thing where I used to cook a few things. Now I do not, because I barely cook for myself these days. But, you know, I might buy certain little snack packs or little things, and I hand them out to certain folks on Wednesday at certain times. And is it everything? Absolutely fucking not. Is it enough? I don't feel like it's enough, you know, but is it my way to also sit down, have a little snack, talk, how's it going? You have a winter coat? Oh, so you know, like start to just like provide resources and also not us and them,
Yeah.
right? Like, did you grow up in this area? What brought you here? Like, just curious, you know, oh, you got fam or this or that. And then you start hearing, as we know, so many stories of that between mental health.
Yes.
Right. Mental, emotional, spiritual health, I would say.
Yes.
Right. And how that intersects with fucking joblessness and capitalism and labor and worth. Yeah. And so, yeah, thank you for bringing that, both of y'all, for bringing that into the space. Fernando, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, no. I just to kind of add what you were saying, and this is like the bigger conversations that for various reasons we don't get to have, or that people don't know that they can have these conversations, or like they don't know the practicality of having these conversations. If we see that kind of suffering, that kind of disconnect in our communities, and we take that step to say, you know what, I'm going to do what I can. I'm gonna bring some snacks for these people, or I'm gonna check in on this person. That's good. We need that. And we also need that deeper analysis. You know, it's uh, that old metaphor of like, you know, instead of just pulling people out the water in the river, we need to find out why are people falling into the water and go upstream, get to the root, what's going on here. And what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation is like those systems, that machine that is producing these outcomes. You know, there's that saying too, like every system is built for the outcomes that it produces. We have to recognize that this suffering that we see, people sleeping on the street, people struggling in the way that they struggle, that is not a glitch. That's a feature of the system that we have. So, like that's kind of that long-term conversation, that long-term process that requires deeper analysis, deeper organizing, but you also need those immediate needs met because you can't get here if people are thinking about what I'm going to eat tomorrow. So it takes all of that.
Hand in hand, both end. Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah. And thank you for the reminder, both of you, of the absolute essentialness. Also, I hear this thread of like, the humanizing with the organizing and the analysis, right? Like it's like the both and how they go together. And I know for me, what really helped, sometimes the relationship part felt really easy, and the analysis or the organize, sometimes it felt like, oh, wait, we're in this pocket and we're not humanizing each other. We're not talking about some basics. Everybody is at capacity or doesn't have capacity. And then other times it would be like the opposite. Like coming in and out of organizing spaces, that in itself requires like, what do I want to call it? Like communal interpersonal skills, or being willing to
Oh yeah.
grow. It's like a whole shit in itself. Like we need a course on
Mm,
We talk about that
care.
so much. Oh my God.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, let me
Oh
start
no way.
start dropping names of no. It's interesting because in the position that we're in, we've gotten to meet a lot of people, like a lot of people who are almost venerated sometimes by community, right? And we've gotten a chance to work with some of those people and to just recognize that, like, even these leaders are completely human beings. Like, they're totally human. They are fallible, as all of us are, right? They have wounds that have gone unaddressed. A lot of times the decisions that they make will come from unexamined shit, and that can be frustrating. But I think the interpersonal is really so clutch. Fernando and I talk about this because we are trying to build something that is long-term sustainable, not just, okay, we're going to do this one project and then, and that's it, and I don't mess with this person, I don't mess with that person, etc. So that is always just interesting, because I didn't grow up in organizing, right? Like I came into,
Hmm.
I've always gone to protests, and I was at the Women's March after the first Trump thing, and I went to Catholic school, so we were always against the death penalty, and I would go to like death penalty protests, things like that. And so coming into the space, I was like, oh, these people, like, I had expectations, I guess, that these
Mm.
people had more interpersonal awareness than they did, and coming into it and being like, wow, it's a lot of unexamined stuff that's at the wheel, and I can see it because of the learning and like experiences that I've had. Not that I'm better than them whatsoever, because I still have unconscious, parts of myself that are continuously seeking to be looked at, but yeah, it's been a really interesting experience to see the willingness. I think there's been a lot of like youth that I've noticed, and Fernando can speak more to this, that have been more willing to take a look at themselves and to really figure out the interpersonal piece, because they have that understanding that it's going to take that in order to build the long-term sustenance. It is still disheartening sometimes, right, where we see leaders in established places who haven't gotten there yet, who haven't gotten to that recognition.
What y'all were both mentioning. I know Cornel West, he likes to say that we're all cracked vessels. Like we're all cracked vessels for the Lord's work, basically. We can do good, but we have to recognize that we got some cracks that we need to address.
Mm.
And in terms of like the organizing space, similar to Leslie, I didn't grow up doing organizing work. I was, pretty much all through high school, I was just a kid breezing through life, figuring things out, going through the motions. College, I start to learn about sociology, psychology, uh, dipping into like ethnic studies kind of conversations and politics. I had my son when I was 22, started teaching when I was around 25. And like around that time is when I started to, when you're in charge of another human life, when you're in charge of educating the next generation, you want to pay more attention to what's happening in the world, but also start working to change that world
Mm.
so that this next generation has a better shot. And that's when I started dipping into the political realm. When I first started working here in Santa Ana in the local space, similar to Leslie, I was like, oh, these people who are going to these council meetings, organizing protests, launching these campaigns, they seem like they know what they're doing. And a lot, again, they know what they're doing in certain respects. But when I would ask, for example, in 2020, when we had a lot of progressive people running for office and we had people marching through the streets for Black Lives Matter, and I was like, hey, I see that these people are over here and these people are over here, and they seem to be on the same page. Why aren't they linking up? And they're like, well, there's some stuff you don't know about. There's some drama, there's some beef. And so they're gonna work over here, they're gonna work over here. Don't you worry about it. And as I got more invested in the work, I started to understand where those disconnections were happening, where those ruptures were coming from. And you realize, like you said, it's interpersonal shit. It's personal beef. It's this person was dating that person, and now they're in these different organizations, and so they can't be interacting with each other. It's this person took credit for this campaign, and so now they are at each other's throats because this person's got to reap the benefits, and this person's still struggling to get by. And the work suffers because of that. The community suffers because of that inability to resolve these conflicts, inability to sit down and work through the tough shit. If we don't have those skills, if we don't have that practice, then we don't get there. So, like Leslie was saying, that's something that we're trying to do. That's something that I've had to learn over these last few years in working with Leslie and learning about these kinds of spaces. Like I was mentioning, reading some books. I'm reading Greg Boyle's Tattoos on the Heart, and something that he talks about is standing by the demonized so that the demonizing stops. And that also includes people that we ourselves have been conditioned to demonize. So people that we see as having committed some unforgivable sin, how can I step into the room with that person and start to build bridges with that person? Easier said than done. Easier said than done. And we're still learning how to do that so that we can help others to do that.
Word. Same here, right? I always, lately I've been bringing back one of my older prayers, something that a teacher, the Ho'oponopono, and it's like, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you, thank you. And I'm just like, oh, and places that I have some crunchiness, it's some like energy of buckness, like, no, fuck that. Like, like really, really sitting with those little parts of me yet again. And I don't think it ever ends. Like I think it never ends. If we really want to be in spaces with each other and take care of each other's children, there's this constant diving within. And I think that we have to stop demonizing our big ass emotions too. And like the grief, the sadness, the anger, the rage, and it makes me think about our children and what they're learning about inhabiting and expressing in healthy ways big emotion, right? Because I'm under this belief, I don't have my own biological children, but I definitely parent and caregive. And one of the things that sometimes comes up is the space where I'm like, I want to step in beloved, to my beloved friends, family, who are the physical, biological parents, and be like, well, what if we let them have rage time once a day? What if we let them, and we created this space where like, no, telling my cousins, like, it's okay, he's not a sissy for crying and sucking his thumb or saying, I want that color. Like the re-education lovingly and consistently of, well, he's having this big ass emotion. Why don't we get curious about what's under it? Right. And so I suppose I'm wondering with y'all, like, what is one or two or three of the most radicalist, thinking of the root of the word radical, like the root of shit, right? Like, what is one of the most radical things we can do as a parent or as a caregiver in these times?
There are so many things. I think what you just said, right? To do our best, because it's so hard, right? Like it is so difficult, especially for parents who genuinely haven't had the privilege of having the space to be able to process their own shit and reflect on their childhoods. This is why I run the spaces I do, right? Because I'm like, if you're going to parent, I'm gonna need you to carve out a little bit of space to get your rage and your grief out, because how can I do that for my children when I don't know how to do that for my inner one, right? My Prisi, what I call her, right? My little self. So sometimes people will say to me, I don't have time. That's legit, right? Like I feel like they do believe that they don't have time. I have also said things like that about things that I don't really feel like doing. I don't have time. But I feel like for the sake of the children specifically, like we must, right? Like we must be able to look in a mirror and ask ourselves, am I offering to myself what I'm wanting for my children as well? Sometimes we don't see the value in naming and validating and things like that, right? Fernando and I talk about this all the time because in addition to being parents, we're now parenting each other's children. And so there's a lot that comes up in the blending of the family and understanding differences and kind of figuring out, where different lines are. And so one of my big things is that validation, right? Is making sure that kids know that even though they behave in ways that may be harmful in that moment, that fundamentally they are good, right? Fundamentally, you are a sacred being. And because you are doing this, I don't have to approve of this behavior, but I approve of you and of the efforts that you're taking to meet your needs, right? Like I hope that you feel from me as mother, right? Feel from me as caregiver, feel from me as adult in your life, that there isn't anything that you can do that would make me see you as less sacred than you are. And I think if all of us had received that message, right? If all of us had that constant in our parents and our caregivers and our teachers and our coaches, because that's a whole other thing, right? Like the teachers and the coaches and like all of these other adults that are making decisions for children.
Yes.
And Bell Hooks talks about how children are the only oppressed class that all of us have been a part of, right? So
Yes.
we have to see ourselves in that identity at that political level too, right? At that power dynamic level to say, oh, I have been this child and how would I want to be addressed, as a child still. So there's a lot we can do. I think we really need to see children as our teachers. I think we need to see them as reflections of ourselves. And we need to find the ways, the time, as much as possible, 5 minutes, 5 minutes to just write down something that, helped you today, or something that is going to be your anchor for tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be a hard day because the kids are going to be home. And I just know that because I have this deadline and I'm going to, be up late tonight and then tomorrow morning, it might be a little bit of a struggle. Like, what are my protocols, right? So we need to have some time to reflect. And if we genuinely feel like we don't have that, then we need to ask for support with it.
Yeah, I'd add a few things. So, what Leslie was saying is, to piggyback on what Leslie was saying about, if we're talking about radical, we've had conversations about what the word radical means. And in a world that tries to dehumanize people, separate people, condition them to conform to this very robotic way of life, radical can just mean rehumanizing ourselves. And I think what Leslie was talking about is like really just helping our kids to maintain that sacred humanity that is innate to them. So validating our kids and treating them as such, I would, really echo that. That's critical. There's we have a series that we ran called Seeds of Liberation, where we talk about how can we raise children to be more conscious about the world around them, to see themselves as agents of change. And something that we caution in that series is remembering that your kid is their own person. And sometimes we want to impose a certain value system, certain mentality, certain life track for them. And that isn't fair to them. We can invite conversation. We can be open to conversation to help them to explore these curiosities, help them be introduced to certain concepts in a way that is sensitive to their developmental stage, in a way that is sensitive to their emotional stage. But to impose that on them is not a fair way to do it. So I think that's just something else. Again, we can go in on that one. But I think for me, what comes up in terms of like, what can we start to do for our children? The one that I'm really working on that I want to encourage other parents to do is just building that community and building that village for our kids. Because I know for me, when I was growing up, I had a lot of aunts and uncles that were involved in my life. We lived in close proximity, sometimes in the same household because we had to. And for me, that felt like a privilege because I had cousins that I could play with. I had uncles and aunts that I could turn to when mom was working or were too busy. I had all these different perspectives that were introduced to my life because of that village I had around me. With my son, that was something that I had to construct early on because my family was more disjointed and people were in their own spaces. And I was lucky to live in a neighborhood where I was able to get to know my neighbors and build that friend group for my boy where it's a weekend and he's trying to play and I can call up three, four families and say, hey, come meet up. And so he had that. As we've grown and as he's grown, try and move to different places, trying to maintain that community for him and because there's a lot of lessons you learn in that, in just being around other people, especially people who share the same values as you.
Yeah.
I think that's where Leslie and I, when we were organizing our weekend events, Sana Sana events for families, it was just an open invitation. If you give a shit about Palestine, if you give a shit about the families that are being persecuted by ICE right now, if you give a shit about just making our community better, come to this park at this time and meet other families who feel the same way. And we'll have some games, we'll have some food, we'll have some music, and just meet each other so that you know there are other people like you who care about what you care about. And if you need help, know that we're here in your corner too. Something as simple as
Beautiful.
that, it can feel radical again in that world where you don't have time to make friends. You don't have time to go out and just be in connection with other people. Fighting against that sense of I can't, and making that time for it. That to me is a radical act that we can all try.
Ooh, so radical. And how, if I can ask, like, how did those meetups go? Or like, what, not what did it produce? I know, like, it has to
Yeah, yeah,
produce,
yeah.
but are there relationships? Are people still coming around each other? How does it make you feel?
Hmm.
Yeah, there's been so many stories of people that have come to us and said, "Oh, I met this person at one of the teach-ins," or "Oh, I met this person at this event," and we're still in close contact. And even for myself, like having our friend Giovanna, who is a leader in one of the amazing organizations here in Orange County called Villages of California. They do incredible work, food distro, things like that. But she has a son that's the same age as my son, right? And so joining a play date with Giovanna and her son, like that is intentional community building, right? That's like, I'm going to, because I don't necessarily, you know, uh, take that step with every single person who has a 6-year-old son, but it's very intentional. It's like, this family has the kind of value system that I want my children around. I try as much as I can to, uh, I guess curate, right? Just like the kind of community, the kinds of conversations, because I'm so sensitive to language. And so sometimes it is really hard for me specifically to be around parents who are really mean to their kids, right? And I'm like stuttering as I'm saying it because oh, hi, Pepper. Fine, Fernando. I'm stuttering as I'm saying it because I remember this one time my daughter announced to her entire preschool class and all of their parents that her mom was somebody who taught parents not to spank their children. And I remember this sense where I was like, oh no, like people think that because of the work that I do that I'm judgmental. It's not that I'm judgmental. It's that there's a lot of things that kids are being exposed to. And I don't necessarily want that to come into, what we're trying to create. I don't want that to be normalized necessarily. And so I think that that's been something that's been generative from these, is that people are beautiful, right? Like people are, just like, I'm just so grateful to be joining in community with people who really do
Hmm.
care.
Yeah. And I'll add that when we had these sessions, we go in it knowing that sometimes it might be like 5 people that come by, and other times it might be 40 people. It depends on the time. It depends on what people's availability is. And for us, it's that notion that whoever needs to be there will be there.
Word.
And if we want it to grow, it's about consistency, and it's about just continuing to create that space for people to come through. Like Leslie said, there are people who come to these events and like, oh, I met this friend here, and now we meet up all the time, and I'm helping them with this or that. We would organize too, the first couple ones, especially because it was, during the summertime when ice was really hot in the community. We helped to organize some of the community safety watches. So like, if you are coming here because you want to go out and help keep your neighbors safe, here are some people who are organizing for that. Get linked up, share your contact, and go do what you do. And some of those, I'm one of those group chats that I see has like over 100 people now. So like, this space that had like 20, 30 people for this one day at the park turns into this massive community where people are informing each other, helping each other, and building. So the other thing too is we always tell people like this is a launching off pad. Okay, that if you're coming here and thinking you're doing enough, think again. This is where you can come to be in community, recharge, rejuvenate, learn from other people, connect with other people, and then go on and take it back home. Take it to where it is. If you're at a school, you're working at a school, take this to your school. If you're in a workplace, see if you can start unionizing your coworkers. Like take this community and multiply it. That's our goal with these sessions.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear, sometimes like the turnout and the like what comes of some of our beautiful gatherings. And to be honest, I've sometimes found one of the positives that like when I worked at the university was that I had so much access to people, like to keep it real. Not that I don't, but it's different, like working for yourself, so to speak. There's like the downside also of things getting like tighter or people being way more spread out and me really missing sometimes getting to know folks on the ground. I have to really like work a little harder, to get that going, which sometimes feels like a whole other task. Like rebuilding, like being like adult friendships, like 101. Like how do we do this when I remember being at the university and feeling like, oh, okay, that's Jimmy, that's Billy, or this, and we had the NAACP out on Martin Luther King Ave, and they would come to our events, and like I had that little, and like in moving and working for oneself, it's like a shift and a relearning and a regrowing. And so what y'all are saying are also like reminding me of new ways to do it, because some of my neighbors are not so friendly. Like I'm like, hey, we're doing it today. They're like, turn around. What floor? I'm like, dang, what? That was cold. Like sometimes I get like, forget it. Like my energy starts to be like, man, why am I even trying? And then I have to like parent my little inner child that feels wounded, and instead remember that we've been conditioned to be disconnected and conditioned, and it's purposeful, this arrangement to just focus on myself and not say, hey, what's up? I'm Jen. I'm from this floor. Da, 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 da. How are you? And make myself go out there. So that's a little bit of my share.
Yeah.
And part of the reason.
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
No, it's just why I asked, because I'm still reclaiming that.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we go on walks, and Fernando does. I think you challenge yourself to see how many like buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches you can get. And sometimes when they don't say it back because they're listening to something in their ear, or like I'm like, these señoras and these señoras, they're a little older, like maybe they didn't hear us, but it's so gratifying when we get it back. It's so simple, just to say buenos dias and somebody else says buenos dias, like there's communion there. And it's minor, but it is a big deal, right? And so we were like, oh, we need to like reteach people that when someone says buenos dias, you say buenos dias, because sometimes we'll do it with the youth as well. And sometimes the youth like, it's like, why are you talking to me? Some of these kids are like, oh gosh, like this is weird. So we're all teaching each other those things, right? We're all hopefully joining in a lot of the values, a lot of the collectivism values. Because there has been this like propaganda machine of these systems that have told us that like you keep to yourself, you don't depend on other people, your needs are a burden to other people, the nuclear family is really all you should care about. That's propaganda. That's individualism propaganda. That's capitalist propaganda. We can't buy into that. And I think that part of the reason that we chip away, or part of the ways that we chip away at that, is by establishing like consistent buenos dias, buenas tardes, right? Buenas noches, meeting some of the people that you do see often in your life, and maybe they don't want to talk to you, and maybe we do have to tend to that inner child and figure out other ways the water can flow through these cracks, right? But I think that at least being committed to that And that's what we come back to a lot of times in the group at the end. It's like, okay, well, what is our commitment? Because then we can come back to that. That's a practical ask, right? That's not like, oh, I'm going to be in liberation. What does that look like? Right. I'm going to be,
Yes.
yeah, but like, what is that actually like? Paint it for me. I want to see it, right? I want to be able to like observe the description of that in action. So I think we have to remind people of that because we use a lot of language, we use a lot of vocabulary. What does that look like in practice? What does that look like in protocol? What does that look like in action?
Word.
Yeah, and the conversation around like being able to connect with people reminds me of so Asada Shakur, rest in peace. She gave a speech or a lecture in I want to say 90s, like late 90s in Havana for the World Youth Festival. And y'all should look it up. It's like an hour long, but lots of wisdom that she drops in there, tells her whole story. But I shared a clip online where she talks about how we live in a society that purposefully alienates us from each other. You know, like she says, like if you can't relate, she's like, if you're living on a planet and you can't relate to the people who live next door to you, who live upstairs, downstairs from you, like that's hell. That's hell. If you're mistrustful of every, you know, like Leslie was saying, when we're walking down the street and we see a group of high school students or a high school student walking down the street and they're looking away because they're afraid to make eye contact with us. Like we have to ask ourselves where that comes from. How did we get so disconnected where eye contact feels like a threat? And then what can we do to start breaking down those barriers? And that, like we've been saying, this is a long-term process, and we have to not take things personally. We have to meet people where they are. Keep the door open, but don't demand that they walk through it. And just lead by example. You know, that when we were doing some of those, we organized a children's march. And I remember there's at the park where we hang out, there's always a lot of men out playing volleyball, playing handball, playing basketball. Rarely do we see women out unless they're at the playground watching the kids, you know. And so when we were doing this march, it's mostly women and children, and we're marching around, and you could just see the men looking like in skeptical slash pride. There was some pride, people raising their fists and saying, you know, hooray that you're out here. But I remember some of the men that we've talked to on and off walked up to me and they're like, hey, this is cool. Let us know when you're doing the next one. So sometimes you have to lead by example so that people can see what's possible and then help, you know, hold their hand so that they can walk that path with you.
Yes. I feel like I can keep y'all forever. And I was like, okay, let me keep track of time here for a second. So I promise I have like 2 or 3 more questions that I'm going to squeeze out. But I think like the question that really, the one I'm kind of drooling on that I was like, oh yeah, Leslie and Fernando. Like I would love to have them in with sort of like, I have no doubt folks are all going to have their different separate experiences of the question I'm about to ask, right? Because there's going to be thousands of lovers, partners, parents, caregivers out there that are going to have an answer to what I'm about to say. But I think it's important. I want to ask both of you also in the spaces that you're in emotionally, energetically, the work you do. What is it like loving, partnering, coupling, being together in the midst of collapse, you know, of global collapse and radical embodied building? I want to add in there because I feel like it's a little bit of both, you know, and also parenting. What is it like being in relationship together amidst this collapse, we're going to call it, and parenting in the middle of it as well?
I love it. I find it challenging and worth it. I find it grounds for learning what I'm here to learn in this lifetime, right? I find it something that is purposeful. The way that we came to be was very serendipitous, kind of just like I had been doing a lot of my inner work. And so I feel like I was able to recognize Fernando as my partner when he came into my life. And but we were not necessarily on the same page fully at that time, right? So there has had to be a lot of working towards what we both want, right? What the shared goal is, which is to be able to hold each other's hand in this collapse, like, which is to be able to know that we have, you know, a safety in each other when the world feels so unsafe, you know, a point of connection when we're being hit, you know, sometimes daily with a new ICE raid or a new abduction, or, you know, when everything was happening with this genocide so intensely, like, I would tell Fernando, I can't imagine not having you here as I'm witnessing just the worst things I've ever witnessed in my life that I never thought that I would have to witness, that I had only read about, you know, in Elie Wiesel's books and learning stuff around the Holocaust. So it's precious to me. It's hard as fuck. Like, it's so challenging sometimes because we are two people, right? Because we are, we have, you know, different upbringings and all of these things. So we make that effort because we know that ultimately this is where we need to be. But it does get challenging, as all relationship does, right? As all relationship does. So I'll leave it there. I'm curious because often I'm like, Fernando, why do you love me? You know, like,
you can
I'm
answer.
like, I know, I'm like, tell me. And he's like, I've already told you like a million times. And I'm like, I know, but 1,000,001 isn't going to hurt you. But that's not the question. I want to hear his answer to your question.
Yeah. So how do we navigate being in a relationship, parenting, while seeing everything that we're seeing? I'd start by just acknowledging that being in a space where we are witnessing what we are witnessing and trying to do something about it in whatever way we can through our platforms and through the work on the ground, it's a choice that we're making. It's a conscious choice that we've decided this is a path we're going to walk, because Leslie and I could go get 9 to 5 jobs that'll pay us a decent wage, and our kids go to school, we make dinner, we go to theme parks on the weekends and go see some movies, and that'd be fine. We could do that. But we recognize that because of what we know, because of the skills that we've developed, because of this calling that we have inside of us, we have to take the positions that we take. We have to fight the fights that we're fighting. And so then that's where the challenge comes in. Like, okay, knowing that we're taking this on as we are also raising our children, because even before Leslie and I met, we were both parents and we had our own situations, but navigating that as we're raising our kids, that was its own challenge. When Leslie and I got together, like Leslie mentioned, we saw the alignment, right? We saw that there was uh, Leslie always says like, "Oh, I saw your greatness in terms of like what you're able to do and what you're capable of becoming." And for me, I was like, I don't know. I was
I
just
was
kind of
just
doing what
trying
I
to,
was.
that's like, that's just how
It's like
I
I was like,
flirt. That's just how I flirt. I just tell everybody that.
oh, I'm gonna remember that. Because
Go
every
on.
boyfriend ever, I
Yeah.
could see your greatness.
Yeah, I just walk around to
No,
everybody. I really do feel that though, that I could see him in a way that he couldn't see himself yet. And so that was the way that I needed to communicate it at that time. But I felt like he had purpose here. And he does. And so I feel like, yeah, you can continue from there, but I stand by it. It's not just my way of flirting.
got you, got you. But when I saw Leslie's work again, I had no conceptualization. I wasn't using words like decolonize. I didn't know what trauma informed meant. I was doing work that might have fallen into that category as an educator, trying to implement like restorative practices in my classroom and in the work that I was doing in the community, trying to, move away from the carceral system and away from this corrupt political system that we have. Like there was alignment, even if the vocabulary wasn't there. But so then when we merged and I was able to learn about her work and have that vocabulary become my vocabulary, um, it became where I was strengthening her work, I felt, through introducing the advocacy work that's necessary to help our families to reach the level of stability and comfort and peace that they need to have in order to show up for their kids. And Leslie was introducing that language of healing that's necessary for people to do the work to help our families get to that point. Like it's all
Mhm.
intertwined. So when I saw that, when I realized that, and then also, Leslie's just amazing as an individual in her own right. But when I saw that we were meshing on an interpersonal level and that our work was so supplementary to each other, um, it felt like a commitment that needed to be made for the sake of the work that we were both here to do, to grow. So like Leslie mentioned, any relationship has conflict. That's something that we talk about in our workshops. Like whatever relationship, whether it's parent-child, co-workers, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, there will be conflict. And the question is, how will you navigate that conflict? And being with Leslie has been a powerful crash course for me in learning how to navigate conflict in a healthy way and how to recognize when people are or moving in a way that is not necessarily a healthy way. So then we can like it I'd say like the relationship has helped me to grow and to be stronger in the work that I do.
Mm,
Uh, it's helped me to become a better parent.
mm,
And so it isn't so much like how do we balance it? It's how does it feed into each other?
mm,
Because being a parent, being in a relationship helps me to be more rooted and grounded in the purpose of the work.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Total sense.
So, yeah, it is a heavy lift. It ain't easy. We could take an easier route, but that's not what we're here to do. And so, yeah, we take the lessons from all the different parts that we play.
Yes. So, off the heels of that, why is it so important for teachers, caregivers, parents, shit, maybe grandparents, tias, tios, aunties, why is it important for like the adults and children's lives to educate them and teach the youth about Tigray, Congo, Palestine, Puerto
Mm,
Rico, Mexico? Like, why is it important for them to understand any and all of these concepts and how each of these situations are really part of a larger, global pathology? I don't know why that word wanted to come through. Theme, brainwashing, all of it, And so, like, why is it important for caregivers and parents to understand and speak to their children about genocide and other forms of white supremacy?
mm,
I'm thinking about that Cardi B meme where she's just like pointing to her eyes and because what we have seen, and my friend Yolanda Williams of Parenting Decolonized had a really good thread this morning that I saw where she's like, everything that I'm going to misquote her for sure, but she said something along the lines of, everything that we're seeing is because of the kind of parenting that has taken place where children are not actually told the truth about their history, where children are
Mm,
also not validated or seen as human beings in these relationships with adults and caregivers, right? And so when I was talking about prevention earlier, right? It's like what are we wanting to build? And I feel like for my daughter right now, she's 13 and she's homeschooled. We homeschool her. And so a lot of times that world is very, very white, very Christianized, very Republican, very individualistic, right? And so there's a lot that I'm fighting against in recognition of her being in that system. But I feel like it also has made me that much more intentional of a parent to make sure, like really make sure that she's aware of certain truths that she may not be taught in school. I think that's the case for every parent, whether you are homeschooling or whether you're sending your children to public school, right? Because we don't necessarily know what these teachers come from all walks of life, right? There's all kinds of, there was a teacher that my daughter shared with me was like, well, we call it the Gulf of America now. And I was like, oh, okay. Like here we go. Um, But it's always been that way for me only because I've always had, and maybe it's, my undiagnosed autism and my diagnosed ADHD, but I've always felt really strongly around social justice, right? I've always felt really strongly. I've always felt like it didn't make sense to me why people in Palestine were experiencing what they're experiencing and why I'm sitting in this chair experience. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like so much of my life has been trying to um understand that juxtaposition and what I mentioned earlier with, leaving the gym. And I'm just like, I'm seeing so many contrasts, right? And I feel like our children need to be able to see those in ways that honor their right to ease, and calm and
Mhm.
everything that children deserve, right? Play and joyfulness and all of these things. And at the same time, um, they're seeing the realities around them, right? They saw the National Guard in our city. They see people sleeping on the street. They are witnessing some of the things that I'm witnessing because I'm witnessing those things, right? I'm their mom, so I'm around them. So we have to be able to give some kind of sense or offer some kind of sense making skills to our
Yes.
children.
Yeah.
And part of that is expressing and explaining how things work, right? And how relationships work and all of these things. So I have a lot of privilege coming into a relationship with my children, right? Where I've had background in psychology and mental health and all of these things. And so my goal is really to ensure that parents also have at least some level of skill to be able to have these conversations, right? Or at least enough humility to say, I'm not sure, let's learn about it together. That's what I'm hoping. And I think it's important so that we can move beyond this, right? So that we can move beyond this terrible, terrible time.
Yeah, when I think of that question, so I wanna before I answer that, I also want to go back to because I think it kind of ties in when we're talking about how do we juggle the work that we do and being a parent. I think that Leslie and I are both very intentional about giving our kids the experience of just being kids. And sometimes we're just gonna sit on the couch and eat some popcorn and watch a movie, or
Yeah.
go on the trampoline, or go outside and paint, go to the park, run around.
Yes.
Like that needs to be key. We need to have our
Yes.
kids experience what it is to. There was a friend of ours who um, Shukri. He was talking about how his family's from Palestine, and he knows the history of what happened to his family. He knows how his family landed here in the U.S. And I asked him that question. I was like, it was at the peak of the genocide during 2024, and I was like, how do you talk to your kids about this? And he shared, he's like, when our kids were very young, we just wanted them to know what love was. And we wanted them to know what beauty was. We wanted them to experience walking through a garden and listening to music and being around people that care about them. We want them to know joy. We want them to know peace. And as they grow, we will begin to introduce the story of their family. As you know, as they're able to absorb that information, we want to understand their history. And as they begin to learn that history, the questions will naturally arise. And that's when you can start to dig through those kinds of uncomfortable stories. There's also a book when we do our series, or when I do my Teach Them Young workshop, I always talk about a book that I read back in elementary school, The Giver, which I think is a good introduction for these kinds of conversations for kids. Because in a nutshell, it's about this boy who lives in this utopian society where no one feels pain, everything's pre-manicured, and he starts to learn about what the world is like outside of this bubble, what the world was like before this bubble was created. And he sees the pain, but he also sees the beauty that was robbed from them in the creation of this bubble. And so he starts to just have that conflict of how do I just accept that this is the way things are? And then he also knowing that there's a cost to this utopian society. There is suffering at the root of this that most people are not conscious of. And so I think that translates to how when we're raising our kids, yes, we want them to experience joy and love and beauty and peace. I also don't want them to grow up to be a cog in the machine.
Mm.
I don't want them to be complacent. I want them to recognize that the food on their table comes from somewhere. Somebody had to get their hands dirty. Somebody in another country may be exploited so that you can afford to have those bananas in that basket that you eat every morning. And I need you to know that so that when you are of age, you can do something about it so that you're not continuing that suffering, perpetuating that suffering. But again, what we were saying earlier is it's not something that you want to impose on your children. And it's not something like we've had moments like that. I know for myself, I had those moments where I was like, I need to tell you about homelessness and why these people are sleeping on the street. Listen close. And you can start to see the overwhelm on your child's face when you have those conversations. The goal is not to overwhelm our children. The goal is to educate. The
Or
goal
our
is to
elders.
enlighten. Yeah, anybody that
Yes.
you're having these conversations with. If you
Yes.
overwhelm, then they close up and they run from.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it is a dance. It's a very careful dance. And I think what Leslie was saying too is the best way to have those conversations is to speak to the reality that the kids are living through and help to provide that context as it arises. When you see that person on the street and they ask, why is that person on the street? You can gently have that conversation. When
Yes.
they ask, why is there a National Guard tank in our street? We're going to have to address that now, you know?
Yes.
Um, I'm
Yes.
trying to think of there was just something else I wanted to add here. Um, I think also just kind of what we're going back to. We can't have that expectation that our kids will become the next generation of freedom fighters, people fighting
Mm.
for liberation.
Well, we
We can't
can't.
have that expectation. Unfortunately, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to say I'm gonna. There's a documentary that I encourage people watch by The Guardian called "The Black Panther Cubs," and
Mm.
it's a powerful piece where they interview the children of the Black Panther Party, kids who grew up going to these freedom schools, kids who grew up uh, being surrounded by the political ideology and the work and the militarism, the militant ideology of the Black Panther Party. And it's not that they were like, oh, I hated it and I never wanted it again, but they talk about the the way that they felt as kids being in that world. Like
Mm-hmm.
as adults, they're able to appreciate it. They're able to see we were a part of something powerful. We were a part of something beautiful. But as a kid, there was that inner turmoil.
Yes.
And and so it's that balance, and everyone's gonna have a different level. Uh, just the last note I'll say is it really depends on how close you are to the pain too. It really
Mhm.
depends on how close you are to the pain. Because if I'm growing up in Gaza as a child, there's no room to, oh, when do I talk about it? When do I not talk about it? You're
Nope.
living it. You're
Yep.
living it. If you are a child of undocumented immigrants here in the US and your parents are afraid to go to work and your mom's crying in the kitchen because she's
Mm-hmm.
scared that your dad's going to get snatched up, it's not a, are they ready for it? It's they're living it. They're
Yep.
living it. And so then the question is, how do I talk about it, knowing that they're living it?
Word.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Hmm.
both. There's just I have so many questions. I have to bring you back. It's like question on
I
question,
know.
but so good. I have two quicker last questions, if that's okay, as we start to bring together our time together. Okay. So I think my question is for like both of y'all as like regular people, right? Like as people. Um, how does rage show up in your life? And does it? Like, do you have a relationship to it? That's it. I'm not going to over
That's it.
explain.
Yeah,
That's it.
I do. I think about my dear friend Soraya Chumley. Do you know her? She does Rage Becomes Her. And she gave me a lot of framing for Rage back in whenever that book came out. Must have been like 2020, 2021. And then around that time, I learned the term sacred rage from the wonderful Dr. Jennifer Mullan.
I was like,
So,
oh, girl, yes.
who? No, but I do have a relationship with my rage, and it's not very orderly. at times, right? Like it's not very, okay, here it is, and I take it with me and I get it fits in my purse. And like it it is an essence, right? That I often will intentionally choose to step into, to fuel, right? To alchemize. I love that word, right? To be able to metabolize it and alchemize it. I find myself slipping into expressions of it that I'm not comfortable with sometimes. Fernando saw that this morning, right? When I had to get up and make lunch and breakfast and everything for everyone. But there is a relationship that I have with it that I'm still developing. Like, I feel like it's still very much in development, and I feel like it will always be somewhat that, where I get to learn from my rage, right? Where I get to understand what it's here to say to me. Same with my grief, right? Same with the way that I hold my water. Like, it's it's a messenger. I've learned that from you, right? I've learned that from other teachers, but it's not always like, I'm not always behind the wheel. I'm not always behind the wheel. And I have to decide and discern whether that is my higher self, right? Being okay with it, just being at the wheel, or whether it's a display of woundedness, right? A display of unexamined, right? Things that need to be examined. So yeah, that's a big, I knew you were going to ask that because you told me you were going to ask that. And even still, I struggle to answer it in a cohesive way because it's not a cohesive experience. It's not orderly, like I said.
And it brings up so much, right? Like rage in itself is messy.
Yeah. I feel a lot. I feel a lot though. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, for me, rage, how does it show up? When I was a kid, I remember being very angry, very violent. I would fight a lot with my brothers, fight a lot with my cousins. Um, and somewhere around adolescence, it kind of turned down, that volume turned down. And now, I don't know, like, I feel like when most people see me online, they either think I'm super mellow or super serious. And I don't know, Leslie can maybe speak to the parts that I don't. I know that for me, I'll say the rage shows up uh, in the work. I'll say it shows up when I see the horrible shit that we see, and knowing that it isn't just it's not a hurricane that's happening. It's not an earthquake that happened. It's somebody pulled the trigger, and those people are so out of reach, it feels, in terms of accountability for what they've done. The rage shows up there. And knowing that if you just were to act on that rage, you might do something stupid. You might get yourself locked up. So knowing, again, having studied the kind of things that people have done in the past when they're fighting against injustice, knowing that you can't let that rage be what's calling the shots. You can use it as fuel to say, all right, I can't go this route because that's gonna end, it's not gonna end well. What can I do to impact the kind of change that I feel needs to happen? And so finding a way to really harness that, I feel like that's the way it shows up in the work. That said, there are moments where sometimes we just got to release the valve and the rage comes out in grief. Because, I think like we all know, like in the work that we do, rage is just that grief that can't be expressed fully. And so sometimes we just got to have that release valve and let the tears out and just shut off the screens for a bit and just tap into those feelings. Let your body process what you're feeling. I remember, I saw some of the worst videos and photos I've ever seen that I ever will see. And I'd call Leslie and I'd just be crying. And like I'd be on the road and I happened to see a photo at a red light and I'm like, okay, I need to stop. I need to go park somewhere. So I think that's something that sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to do, especially as men. We don't know how to do that. And so giving yourself permission, because otherwise it's just punching a hole in the drywall. That's kind of how we know to tap into that. I also think, sometimes there's that negative association with rage. Um, And again, to bring back Kwame, he's like, if you're not angry about the injustices happening to your people, then you don't really love them. You may not really love them. You may say you do, but if someone's hurting your mother in front of you and you're not angry about it, do you really love your mother?
Word.
So I think I also just want to tap into that. Like we sometimes stigmatize that anger and that rage, but like you said, it's a fuel, it's a messenger, it's something telling you inside that things are not right and you need to do something to make them right.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I do want to continue this conversation with you another time because I think, there's something to rage in mothers specifically that I've been kind of just toying with and just, ruminating on certain reflections I've had with my mom specifically because she is very tapped into her rage and for a long time that wasn't seen even by me as something that made sense, right? Like I was just like, why? Like, because it was towards me, right? So like as the child and as the adolescent, it was like, whoa, like I can't receive all of this. And as I've become a mother and understand, right, so much more now, there is like a warranted rage that I think a lot of brown, Black, Indigenous mothers of colonized lineages experience, and you've spoken to just how that is specific to, right, certain lineages, the righteousness of that rage, and so yeah, there's so much there. There's so much there.
Yes, we can have a separate part two and or like a talk-in, right? Because I'm really lately really interested in folks' experiences and relationships or lack thereof, and not in a you have lack of a relationship, but more like what happened, or where were you taught, or what kind of caregiver elder did you have that maybe was coming home drunk, punching holes in walls, doing this, making you feel like, I can't, that's not me. I can't be that, I can't be that kind of parent. So I got to go all the way over here. Right.
Yep.
And then not allow that expression. So I'm always fascinated. And I did do a group with mamas, self-identified mothers and rage for my kin, what is now known as Toronto, John Maramba and JL Umpig. And we, like kind of diving. Yeah, like this is a ways back, maybe a year ago. I say a ways back, but maybe like a year or two. I'm so bad with time. Time is a colonial construct. But really helping like mamas look at like this rage, because I don't think that rage is only ours, that it is also familial, ancestral. Right. Like if it's rage, if it's not just agitation or anger, and those have a place too, but that rage is like your ancestral team, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
Being like, no, time out. Like we've been through this before. Our people remember this feeling. It ain't our people this is happening to, but not again, partner. Like not on these grounds. Like this isn't gonna happen again. Kind of like what you're both speaking to in different ways, if I may. And so I think that, like that balance between not being harmful and taking that out on others and having those big ass feelings and normalizing them, and then like to the work that y'all already do so beautifully, like, and what is that like for parents? Because I find that when I'm speaking sometimes and doing gigs or, speaking to community, it's the parents that are like, my kids get my rage, like maybe not in violent physical way, but like they get my, why can't you just do what I asked? Or, oh my gosh, or, and like, and then do we curb it? Do we cut it? Parents, what do you do with it? Like, where does it go? Do you put it to the earth? Do you give it to that? Like what?
Yeah.
How do you transmute that sucker? Because it's there, right? And then like, how are the kids perceiving it? So I feel like this is a whole other.
Truly, because we do, I think as parents, I have become very close with my rage because I think that motherhood has catalyzed a lot of the learning, and I've done a lot of the learning through the rage that I've experienced and the sensations that come with that, and the choice, like the autonomy to choose different, is powerful, right? It's really powerful, I think, for mothers, especially those of us who have been traumatized by our caregivers, by our mother's rage. So it's a new relationship that we're forming, and there isn't always template, there isn't always, at least not cognitively. And so I think the work that you do, other people who do like ancestral lineage healing and things like that, where we can actually tap into um, some other essences that were in our lineage that are going to be helpful to us, right? That are going to be supportive to us. Because there are those that are not, and there are people in our lineages that ancestors that are not fully well yet, and I don't see myself necessarily responsible to heal my entire lineage in this lifetime. I feel like that's unrealistic expectations to put on myself. But I have been shown things in medicine journeys where I feel a lot of rage. There was a círculo where I experienced, seeing a lot of sexual assault of women in my lineage, and harm done to women in my lineage. Women I don't have any photographs for, but women that I know, oh, this was, this person in my lineage, and coming out of that with that rage, and like almost running away from that experience because the rage was directed at men in that moment, right? Just man in general. Like anyone that's been born with these chromosomes and, have this embodied masculinity in this way. That's really who I feel like it was directed towards. But I had to come back. I had to be something that I work through over time and through multiple ceremonial experiences, and in relationship with Fernando, and making this, purposeful choice to be in relationship with a man specifically. So yeah, there's a lot there. I don't know.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. No, I feel like what you're saying is also bringing us full circle. It's like a
Yeah.
beautiful completion because it's like we're talking about being in community and being relational and trying not to let our wounding, impact, because we all have it. We all get the cracks,
Right.
right? As Brother Cornell, it's all there. And from moment to moment, different people, places, spaces, world events activating these emotions in us. And so like I also hear y'all speaking to, yeah, like doing this relational building work externally, but also internally with one another. Like it's all these concentric circles of the macro to the micro to, the community, our hoods, but with each other and then with ourselves, like really, really being in spaces with ourselves. And before I ask you your last thoughts and last words, I do have one more little baby question I want to squeeze in there. Spirit's like, ask it, ask it. So like, what would 13-year-old you say about your partner with Leslie and with Fernando? Like, what would 13-year-old you say about the relationship? Look at both of you. How cute. Like one did this, the other one did this. It's very cute. The mirroring. What would 13-year-old, 14-year-old, you pick an age, you have to say about this relationship you're in and the blended parenting family that you're in?
Okay, I'll go first. Let me stretch out. What would 13/14 adolescent Fernando say? So, kind of what I was talking about earlier. I feel like when I was a kid, I didn't have any sort of I didn't have a lot of guidance in terms of what's healthy, what's unhealthy, what you should want, what you should avoid. It was really just whatever my friends were doing, whatever I saw on TV. And I grew up during the what's the word? MTV era, you know, rappers pouring champagne on girls on cars. Like that's what I saw. And in school, I would see, all my friends going after whichever girl was wearing apple bottom jeans and like that's your goal. Go get that. I didn't have a sense of like what does a partner look like? What does companionship look like? What does a healthy relationship look like? I grew up with a single mom. My mom met my stepdad when I was like in high school and they got together. But even there, I didn't really have a sense of like what their relationship was. I just knew there's another dude living with us and he's fine, I guess, you know. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I didn't have an idea of like what a relationship ought to look like. I'd say with my relationship with Leslie, it is something that is it's a very deep connection that is um it's something that I've had to grow into myself and understand myself and see that Leslie offers a, how do I say, partnership, you know, like in that we complement each other and
Mhm.
she is there to I hate to say this because I think Leslie has unfortunately had to struggle through it, but like in the way that a relationship helps people grow,
Mhm.
and sometimes there's growing pains there. And I feel like Leslie has been a really powerful mirror for me in helping me to grow. And uh, I think if I were to go back and ask my younger self, like what relationship would you want, I wouldn't know how to answer that question.
Mhm.
Um, but I definitely feel, well, I know that when I met Leslie and when I got to know Leslie, there was a part of me that, oh, I wish I met her when I was younger. I wish I met her when I
Mhm.
was in middle school or high school, and we had that opportunity to grow and to know each other in that way. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it at that. I can keep going, but I want to hear what Leslie
Oh,
has to say too.
oh no, go on. Go. No, I'm just kidding. Um, I always just find it really sweet when he responds in those ways. I hated my mom's boyfriend at 13. I thought I would call him Sasquatch. I apologize if you're listening. I, I really hated him. So, Fernando is my kid's mom's boyfriend, right? Like he's my partner, and
Mhm.
he is different than that person was. I think, it was hard for me as a 13-year-old to accept that in general, my mom was in relationship with somebody new. I didn't really I felt just uncomfortable with that. I think a lot of teenagers do, but my teenager at 13 now, she's 13. She and Fernando have a great relationship, and I love witnessing that because it feels like another part of the healing that's
Mhm.
happening for me where my mom's boyfriend at the time and me he was always just around. He didn't do anything to me whatsoever except was there for my mom. But I still had those feelings towards him, those very rageful feelings towards him. So to see the relationship that Fernando now has with my children and with my 13-year-old is really healing to me. It's very and I heard this message, from spirit or whatever people want to call it, but a couple of years before I ended up separating from their dad, who I was with for 16 years. And I was told, the way to heal some of these wounds is not going to be to stay in this marriage, because for a long time I thought, oh, I just need to make this work. Like we just need to make this happen, and we'll have the white picket fence and everything will be okay. And I'll just, this is. And so spirit told me that the way to heal these things was not to stay in this relationship, but to separate from this relationship differently. Right. And so I feel like entering into this relationship with Fernando
Mhm.
was another way that I got to do something differently than my mom did. Blending this family is another opportunity for me to do something differently. So I see the relationship that I have with him as building a template that I needed, that I wish I would have had, like everything I do, right? It's like, I wish I had had Latinx parenting when I was a young mama. I wish I had had this, right? And so I think a lot of us do that. Those of us that are creatives and builders, like we're going to build the things that we know were needed for us and our families and our cultures. And I think that's beautiful. But I really do see what we're creating as some kind of blueprint that I hope that somebody somewhere at some point will benefit from, right? That they'll see our journey and they'll say, okay, this is what's possible. Um, and I hope that's the case, right? I have been told by some people that it's already the case, and that's really wonderful to hear. But yeah, I just have deep appreciation, deep gratitude. He is so patient, right? He is so patient with me. Even this morning, when I was freaking
Mm,
out, He's like, and he holds me accountable. So it's not just the patients, right? Because there's accountability in relationship as well. So he has had to learn ways of calling me in, and I've had to find ways to call him in. And there's just a lot of learning to come even still, because it's only been 3 years, right? When I think of 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, what will that look like? So that's exciting.
Yeah, just to add to what Leslie was saying, like we're in conversation with elders and teachers who are like in their 70s and their 80s. And so like we have that humility. We're like, we're babies. We're just starting out. We're figuring
Yeah.
things out as we go, but we have people that we can turn to. And like Leslie was saying, we're hopefully serving as that template, and we'll be able to offer that guidance for people who come after.
We're becoming elders, that's just all of us. We're becoming elders.
Yeah. Yeah. And this kind of eldership and re-education is also necessary, as there's such a breakdown and a binary polarization of each other. I really think that love is a pretty beautiful thing. All different kinds of love, like platonic love, romantic love, right? Just like I think at the core of things for me, the decolonial work, the rage work, all for me personally, it all comes down to like love. And that's how much I love my peoples that like I'm willing to like give my time, energy, life, because we said like I it could be a different route. The route could look very different, maybe feel quote unquote easier, more sleep, however you want to call it, but there is also a deep love for peoples, and that's something that Dr. Huey Newton always taught me in his writings and his teachings. It's just like an immortal technique. I'm a big fan. But like my revolution comes out of love for my people, not hatred for others, right? Like most of us do it because of the love first, and then it's like, get out of the way if you ain't on the bandwagon. If you're gonna create static, like just get out of the way, because we're on a not to be cheesy, but a love train. We're on a like building more with one another the best we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I dig that. And so, anything else? What would you like to leave the children's with, Hannah? Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up? And we'll get to the part of like where people find you, but are there any last thoughts, words, anything you'd like for the beloved peeps listening to this or watching this to come away with, to know?
I would say something that I really want to impart to people is just to not underestimate the impact that you have with the relationships around you to transform in all kinds of ways, whether it's transforming the way they relate to each other interpersonally, transforming the ideas and conversations that we're allowed to hold, transforming the ways that we show up in our community, outside our families, outside our workspaces, outside our schools. Like people sometimes see the platform that Leslie and I have on social media and think, oh, how impressive. But that takes away from their own power and their own influence that they hold every day. So I just want to really emphasize that you don't have to have a platform to make an impact.
Word. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
I think I would just offer people grace, like in their journeys, because things are not always, I keep like this word orderly, keeps going like orderly. I think it's because I need to clean my room. But I just, and as I'm saying, like, I think we need to embrace the fact that things are complex, that they are, that there's duality in everything, that there is yeses and nos to everything, right? Well, we're saying yes to something, we're saying no to another thing. Every beginning is a death as well. Like there's all kinds of duality in our lives. And I feel like the more that I can kind of embrace that, the more I can see the timeline, right? The more I can understand the lessons that are trying to be shown and presented, and I don't always get the lesson, right? And like the universe will continue, ancestors or God or whatever you believe, it'll continue to show you situations wherein you must dive into these lessons and really take them in, and so I want to offer grace in that, and the knowing that that we can get there, and that we don't need to shame ourselves in the process, that we don't need to devalue the beauty, the magic, the sacredness of what we are in the process. I just talked to a friend this morning who's going through a really tough situation in her own separation, and I'm a couple years ahead of that, right? And so I'm like, oh, this is really, really rewarding actually for me to be able to show up for this person in this way. And a lot of times when I'm struggling, I think about my community and what this struggle and what these learnings are going to be able to offer my community in the future, right? And sometimes that's the only thing that pulls me out of my hole. Like sometimes that just remembering like, oh, okay, at some point I'm going to help somebody else with this. At some point someone else will benefit from the forging of this fire, right? Like, so I just want people to know that their life is purposeful, that their life is beautiful, that we should never take that for granted, and that the more that we model that for our children, the more they'll be able to embody it themselves.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for your relationship as a model of not what is perfect, but like what is possible, I believe. And thank you for also bringing in like the humanity of children over and over and over, including, of course, adolescents, my favorites, and, all of our youth and all of the ways that their power and identity is often taken away, on a consistent basis. And so may we remember those parts of ourselves, and we probably do consistently, and all of the ways that we can continue to pour into a fun, lighter childhood and a more real, this is the shit that's happening as well, and what you need to know about children and childhoods. Where can folks find you? Where you at? What do you have cooking? Where would you like them to go to if they're like, oh, I need this, I need that? Leslie, Fernando, what are the teach-ins? Where is it all? Tell us. And of course, we'll also put it in the show notes.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Latinx parenting. So there's a whole website that I built a few years ago. We're actually in the process of like auditing it and making it a little more updated and relevant now. But folks can go there automatically. It'll prompt you to subscribe to the newsletter. So those are not super often, so you don't have to be scared that I'm going to be in your inbox like every day trying to sell people something. Instagram is another place that folks can find me, on the Latinx Parenting Instagram, or my personal, which is Leslie Priscilla, at Leslie Priscilla. And yeah, my phone number is, I'm not, no. But,
I was like, no.
no, like if anyone needs me, I'm right here. I'm so aggressive with new moms, by the way. I'm always like, hi, are you supported? Can I give you my phone number? Do you need something? Can I help? Like, what can... So, but I will not provide my phone number here. But yeah, people can find me that way. And I also have a book coming out next August, which I'm really excited about because it will mention a lot of the things that I've talked about here today. It's called Chancla, which is that sandal that Latina mothers especially tend to be normalized holding. And it's all about Latinx parenting and parents and dynamics and all of that. So I hope folks will check that out when the time comes, August 26th. One more thing really quickly, and you can cut this out, but I just wanted to just love you, Jen, because you've really been like such an anchor and such a rock to me in the process of writing and publishing. And like when I think about who my people are that have been my teachers and my guides in this process and practice, it's been you. So I just wanted to name that because I'm like not going to talk about the book and not the fact that you are so much a part of that. And you're just woven throughout the entire thing. So
thank you. Same back to you. Mirroring. Mirroring. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, my handles, if people are trying to find my stuff on Instagram, is primarily where I post, Fernando.Deveras. I'm trying to get into a flow with YouTube because I don't feel that meta is going to be around forever for people like us. So we got to expand. So you can also go on YouTube, look me up, Fernando Deveras. I upload my videos there, and I'm going to be trying to get some more long form content and conversations on there so that people can get some of that. And yeah, I'm also with Latinx parenting. So if you're a dad, if you're an educator, if you are raising sons and you're looking to get plugged in with the kind of work that we're doing, just look me up there too.
Beautiful. Thank you, Fernando and Leslie, so very much. Thank you for being on season 2 From Root to Bone. Folks, feel free to follow us on our socials at Decolonizing Therapy or decolonizingtherapy.com. Please know that we are really grateful for you, and to take a second, to take a breath, have some water, speak into your water, speak into your heart, and remember that we're never again going to be in this place, in this space, with these feelings, in this world, at this time. And so thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. And thank you for being part of this paradigm shift, because you are part of it. Without a doubt, you're probably doing it on a consistent basis. And so thank you. We see you. Care for yourself and be well. Thank you. From Root to Bone is a podcast from Decolonizing Therapy. It is hosted by me, Dr. Jen Mullan. Our producer is Tribble at Ash Tribble Incorporated. Original music by Laura Burke and cover art by Madre Shell. Don't forget to find us on Instagram at Decolonizing Therapy and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Decolonizing Therapy, for the full video version of each episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your people and leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps people find us. For more info about Decolonizing Therapy, visit our website, www.decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well.